Okay, here's my take. To me, Saltburn is a relatively clear movie. It has 3 eras that it slowly morphs between. It begins as a queer love story, then it enters an era that feels mildly unsettling, though you don't know why, and then it jumps off the rails and becomes a tragic horror. But then, at the end, it's revealed that it wasn't actually queer, the main guy was just evil, and the whole thing is a comedy. It's simple. The film is a fable, a cautionary tale about how rich people are weirdos. Even the opening titles tell us how it's gonna be. The film is fairies and fawns, it's vines overgrown on old stone walls, it's new growth choking out the old structures. It feels like a dream or a fantasy. Oliver is motivated by his desire to extract himself from his ordinary, mundane reality. He wants to be more than he is. He wants to play pretend. He wants to absorb, consume, become, and he'll do whatever it takes, including murder. When I finished watching Saltburn, I was hyped. I felt like I had been taken on a journey into madness by my kooky Aunt Emerald. I didn't know you could tell a story like that. The way it was shaped, with 3 very different tonal centers slowly meshing into one another, hell-bent on highlighting these saturated, bubbly, sinister textures and emotions. The way it started as Heartstopper and ended as Gaspar Noé's climax, well, I've simply never seen anything like it. It's melodramatic and pulpy, all the while being shockingly tonally literate. It knows when to lull you into a false sense of security and when to make a neck-snappingly abrupt left turn. It knows how to make you squeamish, scared, horny, and leaning forward on the edge of your seat. And oh God, it is so gorgeous. Easily one of my favorite movies of 2023. So when I posted on Instagram that I loved it, I had a friend ask if this was a cry for help. Guys, why do so many people dislike this movie? I've seen people call this movie tiring, try-hard, inconsistent, meaningless, shocking, and underwhelming. At first, I assumed the critics were like boring, you know? Like they were just scandalized by those scenes. But then I found out some gay people also thought this movie was bad. Unfortunately, I have become cursed with a desire to prove the haters wrong for some reason. So, this is why y'all are wrong about Saltburn. Saltburn is not a movie that prioritizes a cohesive, tight narrative. To me, it is more of a collage, a collection of insights and vibes. And the parts and pieces it collects are so evocative, so successful in their own right, that they somehow overshadow the whole. I felt like I was watching a new shape being born. I was like, wait, you can do that? It sticks the landing by a different metric than I think most are prepared to engage with when assessing media. I'm not saying that everyone who disliked this movie did so because of misplaced expectations. I'm just saying that most people did. If you thought movies shouldn't feel like fan fiction, then that's on you for excluding that from the realm of valid art, you know? I saw a tweet that I can't find anymore. It was from like Discussing Film or like some film update Twitter account or something, announcing that Saltburn got no Oscar nominations. Someone quote tweeted it and said, well, yeah, it's the Oscars, not the Kids' Choice Awards. And this made me feel strange because like, I agree. It was a strangely clear moment. I could hold at the same time that Saltburn is pretty clearly not an awards season type of movie, and that it fucking rules. Its failure by one metric does not preclude it from success by another. And that's kind of what I'm getting at here. When critically assessing a work of art, it's deeply relevant to keep an eye on our metrics. By what are we measuring something? And why have we chosen that angle to examine it? Back in 2019, I saw the film Ready or Not in theaters. Have you seen it? It's great. It's that one with Samara Weaving and Adam Brody about a wedding followed by a game of murder hide and seek. I really enjoyed it. But the friends I went with were pretty neutral about it, I would say. I agreed it wasn't incredibly strong. Maybe it didn't quite stick the landing. I opened up my Letterboxd app and rated it 3.5 stars. But of all the movies I've seen in the past few years, that one has stayed with me. It warms my insides to think about it. Sure, the twist might have been a little predictable, and maybe the societal commentary was a tad ham-fisted, and maybe the plot was a little contrived, but also exploding bodies, weird paranormal shit, chase scenes, a campy premise. Sure, I could see a parallel universe where maybe with a few more rewrites and a different director, it could have been a airtight, unimpeachable work of cinema, an incisive, thrilling class commentary horror movie. But if it were, do you think it'd be quite as fun? This is gonna sound a little pretentious, but a few years ago, I stopped giving star ratings to movies I log on Letterboxd. It started feeling kind of reductive. Like, it kind of bummed me out to walk out of a movie I genuinely enjoyed, even if it was messy, and give it a 3-star rating. Now I just use the like button if I liked it, or I give it 5 stars if it like changed my life. It also started to stress me out that there's no agreed upon metric for what a star rating means. Am I rating the costume design and cinematography? Am I rating how much fun I had? Am I rating how good I thought it was? Am I doing some strange average of all of these disparate elements, stripping away its nuance so I can get a clean, concise number rating? Some of my favorite movies in the world are 3-star movies. They've got plot holes, they're contrived, there's continuity errors, the cinematography isn't particularly inspired, the performances are mid. But despite their rough edges, perhaps because of them, they made me feel something. And lately, as you'll know if you've watched any of my other videos, I've been really interested in trying to articulate new ways to describe what these movies do better than tighter, more critically revered work. It may be a bit of a critical malpractice, but honestly, I am like fully prepared to create a completely new metric to assess a film if I feel like it. If it does something ineffable, difficult to describe, then maybe let's find a new way to describe it. If it's not abundantly clear yet, I'm fascinated by the exercise of analyzing an art object in isolation, as separate from the intentions of its creation, kind of like a death of the author vibe. What is it doing, even if it's not aware of it? What are the accidents and rough edges adding to the aesthetic experience? What bespoke flavors are achieved by doing something no one has ever done before? Maybe for good reason. Saltburn has third act problems. There, I said it. I admit it. I thought long and hard about it, trying to assess if I actually believe that. And I think I do, at least on a conventional basis. The twist at the end, when you break it down, directly conflicts with the characterization of Oliver, the protagonist, throughout the film. The idea that he's been a master manipulator all along feels unbelievable when contrasted against what we saw. Well, it's simply not supported by the text. But God, it's so much fun, isn't it? Okay, go with me here for a sec. I don't think it totally matters that the Oliver we see at the beginning feels like a completely different character than he does at the end. Because we've been along for the ride, seeing him slowly change into the person he's becoming. And we've been experiencing him as the film wants us to experience him. We experience him as shy and insecure at the beginning because that's the arc it's taking us on. We experience him growing more confident, being overtly deceptive and greedy as the film progresses. By the end, this functions as the completion of his arc. Whether or not it's the same movie as the last 5 minutes would have us believe, I do believe that 98% of the film's structure is coherent. It's an arc from perceived purity to evil, a descent into madness. The problem with the twist is that it would have us believe that the arc we just witnessed didn't happen. But also, why are we assuming that what we see at the end is the account of a reliable narrator. Oliver just fucking killed an entire family. We've seen him lie and manipulate and contort the truth constantly. Are we supposed to believe that he actually punctured Felix's tire back at school? Or are we seeing what he wants to believe about himself? That was his plan all along? Wouldn't he just love to recast himself as something greater, now that there's no one left to question his narrative? You know how in the final scene of La La Land... You know how in the end of La La Land, Emma Stone's character remembers the events of the movie through the rose-colored glasses of an old Hollywood musical number, therein commenting on the way we romanticize the past? Maybe it's like that. I have a confession to make. I kinda actually don't care that the twist doesn't make much sense. I can't explain exactly why, but the fact that it doesn't work kind of works for me. Does this make any sense? Can anyone explain that to me? Or what if a twist for a twist's sake, however completely unjustified, is Emerald Fennell's final sentence in her love letter to Pulp? What we see in Saltburn is exactly what Fennell wants us to see. Results may vary on the effectiveness of this lens, but to me, it matters less if the events actually make sense. Take, for example, the scene where they go to Oliver's family's house. Many have said that if Oliver's really a master manipulator, he would have seen through that immediately and never let Felix into his family's house. But have you considered that this scene is extremely juicy? If you're watching Saltburn and you find yourself asking, is this realistic? Does this make sense? Have you considered Emerald Fennell wanted it to happen? Fennell is dedicated to sensationalism. She seems interested in taking everything to a 10, even when it's not particularly merited. What happens if what we want is in conflict with the truth, the logical, the sensible? Is that not consistent with the plot of the film? For someone to take control of the narrative at any cost? Let's set the tone. This is gonna be a major continuity error. The most discussed scenes in this movie are obviously the bathtub scene, the vampire scene, and the grave scene, which I will not be describing vividly as to remain monetized. In every conversation I've had with someone about this movie, I've found people's reactions to these scenes to be a pretty reliable litmus test as to if they liked the movie. When people found these scenes gratuitous, solely present for shock value, or just generally ineffective, I found these people tend to have not liked the movie. To me, these are some of my favorite moments in the film. There's this hypnotic, almost meditative focus in these scenes. They're long and slow. The lens feels curious. What would lead a character to do this? They make us stay in the moment, even when we might want to leave. There's this push and pull, a desire to see more and less at the same time. The grave scene is honestly strangely beautiful to me. It's mournful and repugnant, and it escalates in a similar structure to the entire movie. Especially in this scene, I feel Fennell gazing back at us, the audience. She knows our reaction to the art is an integral part of what the film is doing. These moments feel almost abstract, closer to the world of metaphor than the literal, and this extends to the rest of the movie. How do you depict the abstract concept of obsession? The movie wants us to stew in obsession. It wants us to bathe in obsession. It's trying to drag us deeper and deeper and get us lost inside of it as well. Another criticism I've heard is that Saltburn almost has something interesting to say about class, but then doesn't. To this I say, I agree that there's an alternate universe in which this movie ends with a clear moral or concise takeaway that ties more satisfyingly into the themes it explores. I could see an ending where Oliver exacts some sort of class retribution as an attempt to end the power rather than co-opt it. And it might make us feel, as an audience, like we won. The rich weirdos lost. All is right in the world. But that is not this movie. Fennell wants to blue ball you and make you feel weird while also giving you a rush of satisfaction and send you on your way. The film seems uninterested in big sweeping truths and far more interested in the nuances of individual moments and interactions. One takeaway I had after watching the film was how articulate the film is about the conditionality of the kindness of powerful people. When we're introduced to the family, they seem relatively normal. They're watching Superbad together in an oddly cozy looking living room in a castle.
Hello, Oliver, darling. Oh, what beautiful eyes.
And they seem genuinely kind to Oliver. But as the film progresses, we come to learn the truth. This is a deeply conditional transaction.
Just fucking cringe, mate. I mean, really, you're my friend. You're supposed to be here with me.
I didn't want
The rich people get to feel normal and philanthropic, but only when it suits them. Their giving has strings attached. This is most apparent in Carey Mulligan's character.
Oh, that's just giving me goosebumps. Look, Pamela. Oh, no.
She's bumbling and awkward, a bit of a dark cloud, a bit difficult to digest.
The wettest of wet blankets. And very hard to know from looking at her because she's so stylish.
We see the family's patience with her waning, but they also seem unwilling to kick her out. They are invested in believing themselves to be the good guys. So, in a way that I find to be completely meaner, they find underhanded, passive-aggressive ways to make her feel lesser, to make her feel like leaving.
Well, I could actually stay for a little bit longer.
No, darling, no. You must be desperate to be rid of us and find your own place. I quite understand.
And in her character, we find a foil for Oliver. How is the family feeling about him, despite what they say to his face? If you're looking for a message from this movie, look at the character portraits. Their nuances and contradictions are what the movie wants to say. And again, the point of the movie is to contrast beauty with its roughness, its ugliness, its darkness. There's even an article where the cinematographer talks about the vision they were going for on the movie. Linus Sandgren, ASC FSF, says gorgeous was writer-director Emerald Fennell's favorite word during the filming of Saltburn. Emerald loves things that are gorgeous and ugly at the same time, Sandgren says. Juxtaposing the beautiful with the grotesque and the beguiling with the appalling was essential to developing the look of this film. To me, Oliver feels like a virus that destroys the family. Our takeaways on what he represents in a real-life context feel deliberately obscured. Does he represent the threat of a middle-class usurper, unbalancing the reign of old money? Sure, that's kind of interesting to consider, but what if he's representative of the evil eye? What if he's the embodiment of this base human desire for knocking people off their pedestal? Another aspect of the film that I don't see adequately discussed for my liking is Emerald Fennell's power to create conversation.
I think it was Beyonce who said, "You know you're that bitch when you cause all this conversation. You know who has an Oscar? Her. You know who doesn't? Me."
When someone can make us uncomfortable and not do so by being bigoted, now that is interesting to me. This is what I'm talking about regarding finding new ways to assess media outside of familiar dichotomies. Do we even have language to describe the way art captures our collective imagination? Can we appreciate something for how deftly it pushes our buttons? Is the mimetic value of a work not integral to its identity as an art object, especially in 2024? Maybe we're not having these conversations because they feel nebulous, but to me, that just means we should keep evolving the shape and language of the conversation. Or if people are already having that conversation, then I need to read some books. How can we articulate the special sauce, the attention-grabbing quality, the thing inside a work that compels us to open our mouths and our phones and share it with one another? think the truth of this movie resides in emotion rather than logic. Not that a movie can't have both. Most of the good ones do. But I genuinely think that assessing this movie by the metric of logic will not lead you to a satisfying understanding of what makes it tick. If you can like turn down the dial on your left brain activity for a sec and strap in for the ride, I absolutely think that the arcs, the vibes, the feelings in this movie are not only cohesive, but deeply well considered. I want to know what you thought about this movie. If you hated it and want to convince me that I'm wrong, go for it. It will simply make me like it more. What's that you say? Superbad wasn't out on VHS yet by the time this movie takes place? My love only grows stronger. Thanks for listening to my little rant. I wrote this in a boba shop a couple days ago. I think I need to make more shorter videos like this for a little while because while I'm extremely proud of the Barbie video I put out at the end of December, it took me 5 months to make, which is completely unsustainable, especially when I still have a day job. If you want to help me work towards the day where I can go full time with this, you can become a Patreon supporter. On Patreon, you can get some extra stuff like your name in the credits, downloads of my music, and some bonus videos. To accompany this video, I'm gonna do a bonus video where I give some more unfiltered opinions about the film Saltburn, including the strange relationship this movie has to queerness and the career of Barry Keoghan. It's tricky because on one hand, it does feel like it's a cop-out, but on the other hand, like what's hornier than gay tension unresolved, you know? I am afraid Barry Keoghan knows how hot he is, and it's going to his head. If you liked the video, you can hit that like button, it's not a crime. Maybe hit that subscribe button if you want to see more like this. Okay, last thing I'll say. Almost everyone I know who likes Saltburn, including myself, is bisexual. I don't know what that means. Okay, bye.
Are you having a problem with Saltburn? Quiet luxury. Keep it to yourself, because what are you going to do when Emerald Fennel calls you about her next project where you play Carrie Mulligan's co-worker in the bridal section of Harrods?